Hey, good morning, friends. Today, my friends, is Friday, April the 10th, 2026, and the time now is 7:40 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk about the United States and Zambia, the African nation or the African country of Zambia. And I want to talk specifically about the Health Financing Agreement or MOU that both countries, the United States and Zambia, have been negotiating on, and Zambia could be accepting such an agreement, which many are terming to be exploitative and also predatory. And I do believe that as well. It is an exploitative and predatory agreement that the United States is pushing on Zambia and has been pushing on countries in Africa. Now, friends, please forgive me for deviating, but I want to start with when Donald Trump came into office, when he took the office of the presidency of the United States in January of 2025. Donald Trump immediately began signing lots of executive orders, and one of the executive order that he signed basically entails or including the United States or stipulating the United States under Donald Trump cutting aid to the rest of the world, to countries in the global south, most especially. As a result, there has been lots of strain on countries in terms of how these countries are run, in terms of the financial, economic aid that they need. In terms of Africa, you have access to medical medication, such as for malaria, HIV, and so on. All of these accesses has been strangled as a result of the cut or the pause on USAID as initiated or ordered by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, for me, I see it as benefiting Africa. Now, the United States, under President Trump, wants to humiliate the rest of the world, wants to force the rest of the world to capitulate to its will. However, I do believe that cutting USAID to Africa could work in Africa's favor because, in this case, by African governments, leaders, and countries not having access to United States money and United States aid, they will have to build their capacity, which many of us Africans we've been calling for, and also by them not receiving financial, economic, or aid in other various terms from the United States. In this case, they do not and will not and should not listen to the United States dictate on how to run their countries or country or their system. In terms of the United States under Donald Trump, I've had the theory that the reason that the United States, Donald Trump, immediately when he came to power, began to pause or halt USAID and begin to attack countries around the world, whether we are talking about in terms of economics, finance, and so on, it's because he wants to aggressively go at these countries, destroy their system in that it can basically dictate what they should do. For example, I remember during the war in Ukraine, when the Russian invaded Ukraine, the United States and the West attacked Russia economically, financially, and in terms of misinformation. They pressured African country, okay, under Blinken, to take side, and African countries refused to do so, at least blatantly, okay? I believe perhaps that's what Donald Trump learned. He learned from that. Therefore, when he came to power, he immediately cut USAID, attacked countries around the world in terms of economics, finance, and in other means, and then forced them to do as Donald Trump and the United States wants, basically forcing them to capitulate. Now, friends, in terms of the war in the Middle East, the current crisis the war between the United States and Iran with Israel in the middle. We are seeing the increase in prices of commodities, food, and services, okay, goods and services all over the world. Many are predicting the possibility of a food crisis, general global food crisis, famine around the world. And as a result, I'm very worried for Africa. And there will be a destruction or a damage, significant damage to the world's order, economic order, financial order, and so on. But the United States and Donald Trump are moving on with it. Perhaps this is also a plan, a policy. Create a crisis, destroy the world system, the economic system, the food system, the financial system, the logistics system, which in this case, the vast majority of countries around the world are susceptible to any outside influence and infiltration, and any damage as a result of any decision made by the United States and European countries or outside institutions or individuals. By this war in the Middle East being allowed to continue, should it destroy Africa's system, Africa will be forced to bow to Donald Trump and the United States. So perhaps whether the war in the Middle East with Iran could have been a miscalculation by Donald Trump and Israel, or perhaps it was a plan, or they've realized, okay, we miscalculate, but there are opportunities that we can take out of this, such as allowing the war to continue, having the world system destroyed, which in this case, we, the United States, we are in a better position. And then we can go ahead and draw money, basically print money, and have the rest of the world to capitulate to us. Perhaps that could be the thing. Now, friends, I want to apologize for deviating here. I'm supposed to be talking about the United States and Zambia. Now, in terms of the United States and Zambia, I stated earlier that when the United States President Donald Trump came into power, he paused, cut, or halt USAID to countries around the world, and that has impacted Africa significantly. The United States not only cut aid, but it has been saying that it wants, under Donald Trump, the relationship with African countries to be just transactional. You have resources, I'm going to pay for it, and that's it. Fuck off. That on paper sounds good, but that is not the case. The United States is going for ownership. They want control. Therefore, friends, this financing or health financing agreement, which the United States has pushed on African countries, of which so far about 16 countries on the African continent had capitulated to, they've accepted, even such country as my own, Liberia, is predatory and aggressive, and also it is exploitative. What it allows or require is these countries, and in this case for Zambia, it is said that Zambia could be accepting the worst of the deal. Zambia will be required to not only allow the United States to grant the United States access to its data, to its health data, but Zambia will also have to allow to give the United States, American companies, industries, firms, number one, basically significant concession to their mining system, their mining infrastructure. Basically, this is also a resource grab. Now, because of what has been happening, and we are seeing the war in the Middle East, and it has been also said that the war is also a means for the United States to go after China. Perhaps that could be the same thing for Zambia, which is said to have had a significant Chinese influence. By the United States forcing Zambia to turn over its health data for 10 years, and also requiring Zambia to grant United States companies, firms, agencies, and so on, significant access to its mining infrastructure or mining system. It's predatory, it is exploitative, but also there are other reasons. And this is why I think by United States under Donald Trump doing what it does, I think it could be a long-term strategy. Or if it is not a strategy, they've learned to say, okay, there are opportunities from this behavior. Now, since I read this article, I have not been able to, or I have not seen or heard of any changes to the system so far, even though, or to the memorandum so far, or agreement so far, even though I know that Zambia had rejected the deal. And even South Africa did reject the deal as well. It is very interesting that this agreement is supposed to have a 10-year duration. But Donald Trump doesn't have that 10-year duration. Whether we are talking about in life or in terms of the duration of his presidency, he has about 3 years or less remaining. But the deal will continue. This is a long-term strategy for American firms, industry, the United States to have long-term access to Zambia's resources, Zambia's mining, and Zambia's infrastructure. One thing that I find to be interesting in this case, recently we know that the United States withdrew from about 36 or so international institutions or agencies of the United Nations. And friends, the United States has withdrawn or is supposed to be withdrawing from the WHO, the World Health Organization. It is interesting because one of the noise that Donald Trump had made is that the international organizations or institutions are predatory against the United States, and by them requiring the United States to behave a certain way, they are basically infringing on the US's sovereignty. It is interesting that the same United States that is withdrawing from the WHO, the World Health Organization, is now requiring African countries, including Zambia in this case, to turn over its health data, access to its health data. I think this is scary. It is predatory, exploitative. In the long term, it is damaging for Africa, African countries, and in this case, Zambia. One being that the United States right now is run by a group of white supremacists. These guys are racist. As I said in a video yesterday, Zambia or any other African country turning over their health data, their domestic data or infrastructure to the United States or to the West, in the long term is going to be destructive because these guys want to destroy you. This is like giving Adolf Hitler a eugenics medicine, birth control medicine, while also giving Adolf Hitler access to your population. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis or white supremacists want to destroy the population of color, or in this case, the black population. So giving them access, to your population and giving them birth control pill. Basically, you're saying, come and reduce my population. And I think in terms of this health data, I think that could also be a population control scheme for the United States in Africa as well. But I'm glad that Zambia did rejected the deal, and I hope that Zambia continue to reject the deal, and all other African countries. The 16 African countries that have signed the deal so far, the agreement, need to review the agreement and withdraw from it. I remember someone did a program on this agreement, and there were lots of things that this person pointed out, which I don't know honestly whether African governments, these representatives, are actually reading these agreements that they are signing, or they let the United States and Western government just created these agreements and they go to these conferences and say, okay, no problem, and just sign it. This is why, as someone who is a Pan-Africanist, who is very much strong on African liberation, we need to overhaul our government system and our governing strategy. In key position, people who occupy a key position must have at least a master's degree. They must be well read and be ready to read every information and every document out there in order for them to be able to come up with a very well structured, well thought out, well analyzed and criticized agreement internationally and or domestically, and so on. But friends, as I've said many times now, this health financing agreement between the United States and Zambia, which Zambia, even though 16 African countries had already agreed to this memorandum, to the terms. Zambia is said to be getting, or that it is going to be accepting the worst, but Zambia had rejected it. This agreement would allow Zambia to grant United States access for 10 years to its health data, but then Zambia will not get access to vaccine and any treatment in the future should something happen in the future. Zambia will grant the United States significant mining access in terms of its mine industry. Also, it is said that as part of the deal, Zambia, the Zambian government will have to meet monthly with the United States ambassador in Lusaka, in Zambia, the capital city of Zambia. The government will have to meet monthly to basically give the United States an update in terms of the trading relationship with the United States. Basically, what this is the loss of sovereignty. Zambia is losing its sovereignty to the United States. As Africa had lost its sovereignty, as Africa loses its sovereignty in the present, in the current, every time, to the point where the little bit piece of sovereignty or wiggle room for us to talk back are going to be lost as well. So this is a bad thing. I hope that Zambia stand up and do the right thing. Now, friends, I want to thank you for watching my videos, for watching this video, for supporting the Echoing Voice, and for being a member of this channel, the Echoing Voice. However, friends, if you're new to this channel, this is how the channel is set up. Every significant international institution does have at least one playlist on this channel. And I mean every significant international institution such as the United Nations, World Health Organization, NATO, the African Union, CARICOM, ASEAN, and so on, does have at least one playlist on this channel. However, every country in the world has at least two playlists on this channel. One is named the country's name and the other domestic the country's name. And this is how it is set up. The country's name playlist does have videos, talks, programs, or ideas that focus specifically on the country's geopolitical position, its interaction with countries in its region and around the world. And also, this includes finance, economics, infrastructure, and so on. However, the domestic the country's name has, or it features videos, talks, programs, or ideas about the domestic situation within a country, in this case Zambia, such as education, economics, food security, infrastructure, unemployment and employment, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really, really want to know what you think. However, friends, I am going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends, but most especially and most importantly, or most important, my friends, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace, my friends. Peace.